Welcome back to Cheche, the program where opinion counts. Today's guest is Musalia Mudavadi, leader of the Amani National Congress. And before the break, we were talking about interventions in the sugar sector because it's ailing across the country, not just in Western. And the first thing you said was mobilizing farmers, organizing them, giving them a strong voice. David, you were making a suggestion during the break.
I think that we need to take the politics and suspicions out of the sugar trade, import-export, and growing of the sugarcane, so that, for example, the farmers are secure that their product will be taken up by the factory, so that there is no accusation that our sugarcane is here, it's not being harvested, and sugar is being brought in. If the factories agreed, or the government did a survey, of course the facts are there, and determined that each factory, if you are Mumias, you are Nzoia, or Mohoroni, this is the capacity you can actually produce, then the tally the totals are found. If a factory cannot meet, okay, so that the extra can actually be left to the importation, not necessarily by businessmen, because that's where the politics is coming in, but each factory is given the extra quota to import, so that if it can't harvest to meet the demand, the promise into the national basket of sugar, it then has and is given a license to import in its own name, whether it's going to be within COMESA, it's from Uganda, so that Mumias has got maybe 300,000 tons. It has to supply to the market every year. If it's not supplying that for reasons of maintenance or lack of cane or whatever, they can import their deficit as Mumias to give to the nation. So that then we don't have people saying, okay, there's pilferage, there is cartel, sugar barons who are bringing the sugar. Everybody is happy. The farmers will make sure that their cane is harvested, it is paid for. If it is not, they have a problem with the factory right there.
Okay, so that's the second one. And Mutegi, you were talking about boosting productivity, because part of the reason why sugar in Kenya is so expensive is that because the millers.
Smallholder.
Right.
If you look at the big producers like Brazil or Sudan, the big scale, large scale plantations. Here is 1 acre, 2 acres, they will never make money. And in fact, the only thing we produce in Kenya is just sugar. We don't produce other things. Whereas in Brazil, sugar is just a byproduct of other things, including fuel. Now, if you are going to stay with those small scale farmers who are disorganized in cooperatives and whatever, and the factories themselves are 19th century machines.
Yes.
Many of them belong to the government. Government is not going to improve. Then, however, to me, the best thing to do is close the thing gradually. Wean these people from growing sugar, grow something else. There is no coffee in Kiambu today. There is no coffee. In fact, my mother used to have coffee. I chopped it off when it became useless. That's the solution.
So farmers should move.
Yes. Can you sell that to farmers in Western Kenya and elsewhere, that they need to grow other crops?
Okay, I think if you look at it critically, the model of the sugarcane farmer in Kenya is different, and this one I buy what Mutegi Njao says, that the model in Kenya is largely smallholder based process, and it was a good model even for Mumias, because then the core of the sugar came from the smallholders and not from the nucleus estate. Now, why I'm bringing this is that it's important to look at the comparative advantage that the large plantations have, whether you're looking at Kenana in South Sudan, just to be closer home, or you're looking at what is happening in Kakira, or if you go down further, you will look at Malawi, Zambia, as an example. They tend to have vast plantations that are not necessarily small-scale holder. Now, in Kenya, particularly in Western, where the core of the cane is, we have a serious problem that we are dealing with the smallholder. That is a big disadvantage in the context of operations, in the context of profitability, transportation of the cane, and ultimately the profitability to the farmer. So it is something that needs to be looked at. Now, you cannot guillotine the issue of sugar versus another crop. Okay, there's merit in diversification in terms of looking at it purely from an economic viewpoint. We must diversify, no doubt. Now, you do not guillotine the sugarcane farmer and just say that forget this and immediately this. You must systematically introduce other crops also. Now, what are the other crops? Maybe the immediate comparative one you could have is something like tea, as an example. Tea can be introduced. It has a better model for small-scale holders. In fact, Kenya's model is perhaps among the best, the KTDA model, globally. And the income is regular. Sugarcane income is not regular. It comes in after your 18-month period.
In overall, how do you explain to a farmer who says that this deal is meant to impoverish those of us from Western and Nyanza?
I have said that once I'm privy to the full content of any document that has been
But the full content of the document is not paying my children's school fees or paying my rent. I'm a farmer, I depend on sugarcane.
You see, the issue is that what is there? Because if it is skewed against the Kenyan sugarcane farmer, then it is not the right deal. If it is outside these protocols that I've talked about, then it's not the right deal. So the government can help us here, and I'll repeat again, the government can help us here, help Kenyans, by just saying, here is what was executed. And there's nothing preferential, or there's something preferential. And if there's something preferential outside these protocols, there's room. Even in these protocols, you can actually place your case if you think that the local economy or of a partner state is going to be seriously injured. You have a window to be able to lodge your objection or your appeal for a variation of any...
Isn't that the reason why we
any problem?
Exemptions from COMESA? Over and over. Every year they come.
Yes.
Please extend.
Yes, because
suppose COMESA say no, we won't. What would happen?
If COMESA says no, we won't, then that becomes the situation.
What will these people making noise now say?
Then they'll have to live by the rules, because you have entered into a pact within those treaties.
You see, there is the other dimension.
But we're missing the point here, because I thought we said we wanted to argue, I mean to debate the issue of how do we revive.
We are reviving it. We really have to
back to the agreement, okay?
Because we are having a conversation and we have viewers.
Okay.
Among those viewers will be sugarcane farmers. And you've talked about protocols, which those of us seated here might understand, but we have no direct interest in sugarcane farming. So to the person who is farming sugarcane, who might be saying, but my sugarcane is rotting in the field and I have no money to take my children to school or to send people to hospital, how do you explain that, yes, these protocols exist, but my situation is I have no money in my pocket?
The point here is that if we have to help that sugarcane farmer, we have to go beyond just the trade agreements. We have to look at the efficiency level of the sugar industry. And I was trying to build up a case when I was talking about the small-scale farmer and the complications.
And which is where the question came up, because how do you then inform, how do you communicate with the small-scale farmer?
Right. Now, we have to look at this. Have we done well in terms of our research, the Kenya Sugar Research Foundation? We have always had the 18-month to 24-month cane in Western Kenya. Has the sugar research produced a variety that can mature and be harvested in a shorter period? No, we have not. I mean, they were trying to develop some, but so far they have not developed a suitable one to present to the cane farmers there, to the best of my knowledge. And that is why we are still stuck with the same kind of variety all this time. If you go to the coastal side, the soils and climatic conditions are different. Cane there matures much earlier. It can take 12 months, and that is the same thing that holds for a place like Mauritius.
The short, so unpopular argument, if I interrupt, is that people in Western are crying that the interventions by the government are not adequate to bring back their livelihoods. That the money that has been put into these factories to get that farmer to sell and to therefore survive are not adequate. And they're drawing parallels with interventions, for example, in the coffee sector, in other places, where things seem to have quieted a little because perhaps the government input was adequate. In your view, and going back, not just with this administration, since this is not just a current problem, it began, you know,
it's a long
10
time
years ago.
Yes, it has been building up. Yes.
Yeah. Has the government been proactive enough to rescue the sugarcane belt from its poverty?
I think there's some issues. Like there's let's say, what was the serious intervention that the government put in place? It put in place a program with the farmers themselves through the sugarcane development levy to assist with either research or to assist with capital that can help those factories. Now, one of the issues that has happened over the years is that the cane development levy has not been used for cane development. Okay, the focus of the original mandate of the Sugar Development Authority started shifting into other external issues, monitoring,
importation,
or issuing licenses, and playing around with the issuance of licenses, and therefore
which you see in the papers
the original focus of ensuring that you're supporting the farmer to develop the cane lost out. Secondly, the follow-up of some of these resources that have gone to factories was also not up to speed, in the sense that a company would draw maybe 500 million Kenya shillings or 600 million Kenya shillings, and in its proposal it said we intend to do the following: modernize the equipment or buy this equipment, and then what happens? You find that does not go there, and then they use that to pay off suppliers of other products, again missing
How do we correct
the point. That is mismanagement.
So that is mismanagement.
Where the government again hasn't performed well.
Yes. So there's some aspects of mismanagement.
I don't know if mismanagement is a corruption. Because I remember there was a time when Musalia was buying, when Musalia was Minister for Agriculture, they were buying fertilizer for the farmers. And the money was pilfered. And I remember calling us saying, why are you ruining my minister, Musalia then? Corruption is rampant in those areas.
Yes. Now, these are issues, and they're fundamental issues. So I've talked of mismanagement. Then the element of the corruption or good governance comes in, because a lot of the issues that are coming out here affecting some of our factories, because we should not run away from that also.
It's not just sugarcane.
It's also a fact that people who had the authority and had the mandate to make sure that they manage the sugar factories well, used those to enrich themselves, and in the process again they've hurt the farmer. So we have to look at technology, we have to look at varieties, we have to look at corruption and governance. All these have to come in. Now, will the government do it on its own? The fact of the matter, no, they will not, because
so who should? Because factories the government.
I'm getting there. Yeah. I'm getting there. The government cannot do it alone. So the government must quickly bite the bullet on some issues and say, look, we can no longer delay this privatization program. Let us move fast, but reasonably, with following all the proper procedures, but let us move fast. Let people who are going to be dedicated and who will be ready to inject enough resources to support these factories, and to support the farmer, to support cane development.
A factory, Mheshimiwa, that is 12 billion shillings in debt, and plus, like Nzoia. How do you privatize? Who will buy it? Even the infrastructure it has itself alone cannot, is not worth it.
You see, investors will look at, you'll create a prospectus. People will look at it, and then they will negotiate with you and say, I know this debt is payable and this one is not payable. This one perhaps would have to be written off, and this one is a debt that can be dealt with. And this can only come if the government allows the private sector to engage properly instead of piecemeal. If we are going to privatize on the basis that, do I have a shell company or a partner who is going to then provide the bid so that I can become a shareholder of the new entity, then we will never privatize. So these are the issues that we need to tackle to be able to, because there are some people who are delaying privatization because they are hoping that they will have set up their friends somewhere
to take up the factory.
To take up the factory.
Why do you think a lot of the shouting about the sugar is coming from Western Kenya yet, as you've established, sugar is produced all over the country?
Well, if you are to take it in the context that Western Kenya, if you are to look at the old provinces, Mumias is the largest producer of cane. So if you take what Mumias produces and Zoya produces, they produce more than 50% of the cane in the entire country. So from that perspective, you can understand why it is motive from that region. But what is good for a sugarcane farmer in Mumias will also have to be good for the sugarcane farmer in Soni, or Chemelil, or even in Kwale. So we must bear in mind that this is a national industry. It is a sector that is critical to us. But in addition to that, what is the value addition that comes up? Then another issue that we will need to look at is that, have we looked at our own tax regime, internal tax regime on some of these issues? As much as we say we want development levy and all this, to what extent are there similar taxations in Uganda? To what extent are there similar taxations in Malawi and other places? Are we also dealing with a scenario where there could be some subsidies that are accruing
to make it cheaper to produce
to farmers in those areas than here?
Exactly,
now,
because the flip side of that argument is that Kenya is doing deals against the interests of its people.
Yes. So if for instance that it happens that there is also some subsidies that are there, and there's also a framework on dealing with subsidies and which can be turned into unfair trade practices. If there are subsidies that are there to some of these countries and they're not available here, then again the balance is not correct, and then Kenya needs to address that with its partner states within the community. Now let's just digress a little bit from cane. Let's take maize, another emotive issue, and it may not be long before you hear it coming up.
Yes, farmers of maize they cannot buy.
They have maize
we had that
and whatever. Now, recently, I think the government allocated 2.5 billion shillings to in the last budget to allow for cane. I mean for maize purchase. Now, if you move around, you'll notice that in the traditional areas, whether in the South Rift or North Rift, the cane is, the maize is just almost maturing. But at the same time, you now hear of truckloads of maize queuing in certain area to deliver maize to the National Cereals Board. Chances are that it could also be maize from a neighboring country in certain instances, because we have had maize coming in from Uganda or maize coming in from Tanzania. It's delivered by the middlemen, and by the time the farmer here is supposed to deliver his, the cereal board has no money to take his maize. So these are critical issues. The whole issue of the agricultural sector maybe needs to be relooked at or reviewed from time to time. And I just want to bring that parallel to show that there are challenges. And another example that is in this, now away from maize and away from
produce
and sugarcane and other produce, we also have challenges with the movement of labor, because a country like Tanzania, as much as we are within the East African Protocol, we have challenges when it's time for you to get an assignment in that country, yet the framework is here. Now all these are issues that need constant review,
And so how would you deal with that? Because we've talked about sobriety in this sugar controversy, but we all know, as you've just pointed out, that Kenyans trying to get permits in Tanzania have a difficult time. So what should we be doing? Because we cannot expect Kenya to be the big brother, to always take the higher road when, you know, it does everything according to the book and the others don't.
No, I'm not saying that Kenya does everything according to the book.
I said expect.
Now, what I'm trying to say here is that this document allows for regular review. If there's if there's a perception or there's a real danger of serious injury to the economy of any member state, you have room to be able to put in an application or a complaint, lodge a complaint to the Secretariat within 30 days. That Secretariat must then make sure that it is disbursed to the member states, who must respond in 90 days. And thereafter it goes to the summit, and it's either taken as an amendment that has been carried, or it is being seen as something that has been rejected. So I would like to really tell Kenyans here is that the basis of us being reasonable and then move away from this hula baloo is ultimately for the contents of an agreement, if it was signed, to be made available, so that we are now not arguing hypothetically, but we are arguing to say, sorry, this particular pact, if there was a pact, is outside the purview of the protocols, and therefore needs to be
so the call for rallies later this week, I think it is Friday, by the opposition called, is what, neither here nor there, politics? What?
That is going to be their style of doing things. But I don't think issues of rallies at this stage would solve this. Let's take a classic example of Greece. The bailout in Greece.
Yes.
I mean, it is a classic example where Tsipras and his team called all these political rallies. They even went through a referendum.
Yes.
I mean, they've come back to the same table, and they have to figure out that.
The government would say they call these leaders after the first uproar to go to State House so they can be given the documents. They refused to go. Some of them are your members. Did you consult? Did they consult you?
They're not your members anymore.
Well, of course, in the new dispensation. But did you consult? Did they consult you? And what would have been your decision on this? If you were not invited as well.
On this particular issue, no, I was not invited. Okay, I'm not a member of Parliament. I'm not a member of the Parliamentary Caucus.
Yeah.
Now, and I did not give any direction to the members of Parliament that would be aligned to my my party. So this was a decision they made. It was spontaneous. I was reading about it in the papers, like many other Kenyans. I think what you tend to sympathize with the members to a certain extent, in the sense that they're still also groping in the dark. Is there a pact or no pact? And unfortunately, or fortunately for that matter, the Kenyan society is sometimes hypersensitive. They tend to think that if Makali has had a meeting with me, then
you've agreed.
You've agreed. So there's that genuine fear, which we need to understand and hopefully grow out of in due course. But the fact still remains that Parliament is going to be there. Maybe the relevant Committee of Parliament is going to demand further clarification.
Right.
And it would be good that this is the government prepares and clarifies. And then we can all work together, because at the end of the day, the throwing of stones
they should
not
help
helping
by
the
now. I mean, especially because these members of that committee are from both sides that are now throwing stones. How will they then sit and agree?
This is the problem, because they've all taken a position on the basis of political party affiliation and perhaps hearsay, because we still have to see the content.
Okay, well, thank you. You know, that certainly shed some light on the sugar controversy. We've got to take a break now. This is Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV. We'll be back after this break.